lovely Wednesday night. This is Mike in the house, and I was on the I was on here earlier, and I am so sorry I got interrupted. So, you saw the thumbnail, and apparently, you know what's coming. Um, so I apologize for the interruption and stuff like that. Alright, so we're gonna start this over. Hopefully, there's no more interruptions. So, what is going on, YouTube? How's everyone doing today? This is Mike in the house, and I am discussing as we got some very sad news earlier this afternoon, late morning, early this afternoon. Um, Television icon Norman Lear passed away at the age of 101. Norman Lear, he has done a great amount of television shows, including Maud, Jefferson, Sanford and Son, Good Times, and stuff like that. So, um, who we got in the building? We got Nathan in the building. What's going on? Norman Lear was amazing. Truly did some. Yes, he did. He did some great things. Great things. So before I get to before I get to his shows, his famous shows, his infamous shows, I want to touch on briefly about his life first. So Norman Lear was born in 1922 in New Haven, Connecticut. He flew the S-2 combat missions over Europe in World War II before he went into television and film. So I will say this: one of his two notable film credits that he executive produced was a movie called The Princess Bride. I did not know he directed that. That starred Carrie Elwes and a lot of other, actors that's in that one. Never seen that one before. And then a movie called Fried Green Tomatoes. I did not know he also produced that one too. I did not know that. Yeah, it didn't. That's kind of like both of those are kind of like not even Norman Lear esque, but the fact that he executive produced those, and both of those got great ratings, got great reviews too, I might add. So Norman Lear. Some may say that Norman Lear is crazy for producing these shows and having actors dropping n bombs and c words and stuff like that. Say the I'm not gonna say the derogatory names on here. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know who's watching, so I do not want to offend nobody. So I'm just gonna keep this one PG, only because you know what I mean. Because I don't want to get booed off again. You know what I mean? So um now, back then, some of those shows, like you can get away with so much. You know what I mean? Like one of his first breakout shows that he produced. And this was his baby. And this one spun, I believe, several spinoffs, as a matter of fact. And I'm going to get to those in a second. But first, we're going to talk about All in the Family. Now, All in the Family was actually a fun fact. All in the Family was a it originated in the mid to late 60s, like kind of like late 60s, like 60. I know it was a pilot that was in 69, and then it was another pilot. It was two pilots. So um the first two pilots, I believe it was made for ABC. Um, they wanted ABC to pick it up, but apparently CBS picked it up. Now, you had Carol O'Connor and Gene Stapleton. They were the original cast for both of the pilot episodes. But then you had two different Mikes and two different Glorias before Rob Reiner and Sally Struthers was casted in the CBS version. So All in the Family, debuted in 1971, and it broke a lot of barriers. You know what I mean? And you have this grouchy Archie Bunker, who hated everybody. He hated everybody for all. And I don't. It don't matter if you black, white, Jewish, whatever. He hated. He made fun, and he made fun of everybody. You know what I'm saying? Like he talks about everybody. He's kind of like the white version of Fred Sanford. You know what I mean? And I'm gonna get to Fred Sanford in a few, but he, Archie Bunker. I mean, he hated everybody, but for some reason he loved Lionel, who was played by Mike Evans, and Lionel was black. I mean, he liked him. You know what I mean? And Lionel, he was a well-respected man. You know what I'm saying? So, excuse me. So, um, him and um Rob Reiner's character, Mike, well, I should say Meathead, they had so many debates. It's not even funny. Like they were arguing like a married couple. You know what I'm saying? And you know, Mike, he was the like he was kind of like the he was I'm not gonna say conservative, but he was political. You know what I'm saying? He was political. He talked about politics. You know what I mean? And I would love how they go back and forth. You know what I mean? And the first season of All in the Family, I think is a classic. You know what I'm saying? I say the first couple seasons I thought were classic, and then you had other, but it does touch on a lot of subjects too. You know what I'm saying? And you had like so many like infamous moments. You know what I mean? It's not even funny. And one of my favorite episodes on that show was it was what is it called? It was titled My Breaking Back from season 1, where Archie Bunker, he apparently he threw his back out, and the way he treats Edith, it's like Edith, I felt so bad. Like I feel bad for Edith at times, because even though like Edith, yeah, she does have her airhead ways, but she was very lovable. You know what I mean? And it was one day where I forget what season it was, and and I'm like, you need to stand up to this man. You need to not let this man talk down to you. And once the infamous episode where Edith told Archie to stifle, like stifle, stifle, stifle. Oh my god, like that was the infamous moment. I'm like, way to go, Edith. Way to go, both damn time. And Archie Bunker, he was so floored, you know what I mean? He was, oh man, he was, man, because it's like, okay, well, I mean, come on, you talk down your wife, you know what I mean? And you call your wife a dean bad and all that other stuff, telling her to stifle, stifle means shut up, you know what I'm saying? He was just miserable. Um, there's another moment, and they touched on homosexual, and it was the first season where it was one of Archie Bunker's friends, who was played by McDonald Carey, who played Asa Buchanan on One Life to Live. If that, yeah, I think that's his name, McDonald Carey. And once he told him that he was gay, then Archie's like, no, no way, no way, hell you are. But it's like, yeah, I am. And then Archie was just so confused, and it's like, what the hell? You know what I mean? And I kind of wished that we saw a little bit more of, him, his friend, you know what I mean? Um, so yeah, those are like one of many like infamous moments. And then another moment, I think it was Edith's rape, if I'm not mistaken. It was this guy that came in and who tried to rape Edith. That was a sad, very sad, good episode, great performance. Award worthy performance by Gene Stapleton. And then you had Sally Struthers Gloria, who was like the king and like she was kind of like the peacemaker, of the bunch, you know what I mean? She had her moments too, you know what I mean? So then, speaking of Lionel's parents was George Jefferson, believe it or not. So Sherman Hemsley made a debut on the All in the Family, and that's what spawned off the Jeffersons. And the Jeffersons came out in 1975 to 1985. Now, that was a spinoff from All in the Family, but that was because it kind of followed not only the Jeffersons, but it did follow um, Mike Evans' character Lionel Jefferson. But I felt like when Lionel left the show, and Mike Evans, he produced, I believe, the Jeffersons. I think he produced um, On the Family as well too, if I'm not mistaken. So when he left that show, I think he continued on to produce. He became a producer of both shows. And the Jeffersons, it turned into its own show after a while. You know what I mean? So then another um, episode was where B. Arthur, I believe that was I think that was Edith's cousin, and that spawned its own spin-off, Maud, from 1972 to 1978. You know what I'm saying? And that even became its own show too after a while. Now, I don't know too much of Maud, but I know B. Arthur was in it, and a future Golden Girl, Callahan, was also in it too. And I think Betty White might have guest starred, but don't quote me on that because I've seen Betty White in certain things that McCallahan was in. They were both in Mama's Family too before they were in Golden Girls. So now another spinoff that came with that too in Maud was you had Florida Evans, and then you had James Evans, but I think they were under a different last name, if I'm not mistaken. Um, that that good that spawned off into Good Times. Now, here's a fun fact. Hi. Now, here's a fun fact with that. Um, People interrupt me one more time. I swear, I'm gonna scream. So, here's a fun fact with that. Now, um, Good Times is a spinoff of Maud. And they wanted to do Good Times was originally supposed to be a show about a single mother. They wanted Florida Evan. They wanted Esther Rowe to be a single mother, but she told Norman Lear, she said, "I'm not doing the show without um, I'm not doing the show without John Amos," which rightfully so, because even though like the premise would have worked, but I don't think it would have made it that far. You know what I'm saying? I just don't think it would make it not that far because we've seen it before. Like we've seen shows about single parenting. You know what I mean? So you talking about single parenting to three kids. You know what I'm saying? So um, John Amos was casted in the role. You know what I'm saying? And John Amos, he was only there for about 3 seasons because apparently he didn't like where the direction of the show was going because he didn't think JJ was funny, who was played by Jimmy Walker. He didn't think he was funny at all. He thought that the whole show was going to be about the whole family and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And so I think it was normally himself called up John Amos, and he was like, "Well, I got some good news and I got some bad news." And John Amos was like, "What's okay? Give me the good news." He's like, "The good news is that um, Good Times is up for season 4. It's up for another season, but this bad news is you're not gonna be in it." So that led to season 4, the infamous season 4, where they killed off James Evans. Now, now the producers, the writers, they told Norman Lear, they told him, it's not after you kill him off, it's not gonna make it. Well, blowing the hole, it ran from 74 to 79, so it lasted for about 2 more seasons. You know what I'm saying? And 2 to 3 more seasons. And I'm surprised it lasted that long. Then, they brought in Jerry Jackson, which I thought she was great. You know what I mean? But she was kind of forced to be in it. You know what I mean? And back then, she just wanted to be a kid. She didn't want to go into show business like that. So, of course, Joe Jackson, forces their kids to do something they don't want to do. So forced her to be in the show. She was good. I like the rapport between her and Walona. And then you have Keith, which I didn't think he was funny at all. I thought he was stale. He had a couple of good scenes, you know what I mean? And yeah, that was about it. Otherwise, he was just too stale. Yeah, Little Penny, that guy, iron, yeah, the iron scene, yeah, 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 yeah. So, um, let me see who's in the building right now. So we got Eric Johnson, 1994. Subscribe to Eric Johnson, 1994. His very dope, very dope person. We have Q Smooth. We have Nathan Tasker. What's good, y'all? So yeah, so you have other shows too. You have other Norman Lear shows. So yeah, I saw a little bit of that. I'm gonna watch that as soon as I get off of here. Yeah, that's terrible. Texas mass shooting. This world has gone to shit right now. Um, so you have Sanford's Son, which that was from 1972 to 1977. Now Sanford's Son was like he Red Fox. He was a black Archie Bunker. he did not like nobody. You know what I'm saying? Like he had fights with even Rollo. Rollo was Lamont's friend, you know, who was well played by Nathaniel Taylor. With the story with that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, originally, Demond Wilson was not the first choice to play Lamont. They wanted Clavon Little. But Clavon Little at the time, he had scheduling conflicts. You know what I mean? So he couldn't do it. So Clavon Little at that point, he was a, movie star at that point. Yeah, Red Fox. He did win one Golden Globe, which I thought he should have won an Emmy for that show. I mean, come on now. Sanford Son. I love the first three seasons. You know what I mean? You had the introduction to Aunt Esther, and you had Bubba, and then you had Grady, which Grady had his own spinoff, which that didn't last but one season, and that Norman Lear produced that one too. But so at that time, I think around season three ish, it was when Red Fox left the show because he was not getting paid enough. He was not getting his due. You know what I'm saying? So he left for a while, and Grady took over for a little bit, and then once he came back, that basically it just wasn't the same. I mean, when Lamont was in that perm and he started to dress like he was, rich he was dressing, you know, from Saks Fifth Avenue and all that, then yeah, it just went downhill from there. You know what I'm saying? So, um, yeah, so that show, I'm not gonna lie, that's one of my favorite shows. I always gonna love season one, season two, season three. You know what I mean? Like, I I like one of my favorite episodes was it was a episode titled Cross Swords, and Lamont found this porcelain. It was this porcelain that was worth some money, and then that was his one ticket out of the junk business and stuff like that. And then um once they went to this auction, and they tried to bid on the porcelain. Fred started bidding on the porcelain, and Lamont was so angry at him, calling him a numbskull and stuff like that. It was so crazy. You know what I mean? And man, it's wow. And once Fred dropped the porcelain, and the scene where Lamont tells Fred, it's like, you holding me back here. If I stay here, I'm not gonna get anywhere. I'm just gonna be a broken junk deal like you. That was a great performance by Demond Wilson. Whenever I watch that scene, I would want that scene over and over and over and over. And the interaction between him and Red Fox are priceless. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that was probably maybe the only dramatic scene in that show. Otherwise, that whole scene was just funny. You know what I mean? That whole series was funny. You know what I'm saying? So Red Fox, he was a trip. Rest in peace to Red Fox, definitely. CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC, and the CW just aired in memorandum ID. That's good. That's awesome. They need to, because he's a definite icon. You know what I mean? And all these shows that came out back in the '70s in '80s and stuff like that, it would not fly today. It just wouldn't. But that we got shows like Euphoria or Power or all this other stuff. You know what I mean? I've never seen the shows, but I mean, I saw a couple of episodes of it. It's just I don't know. Like some of these new shows, I can't even get into. So then, um, now Silver Spoons was another Norman Lear show. I didn't know he produced that. That was pretty good. That was with Ricky Schroeder, and Alfonso Ribeiro, believe it or not, came on season 3, and that was his breakout. That was his breakout role. Before um, Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and also Jason Bateman was also on that show for the first 2 seasons. Well, they took him out. They took him off. They took him off, and the reason why, because they did not want to. They didn't want him. They thought he was outshining Ricky Schroeder, which I mean, Jason Bateman. As a little kid, he was pretty good. He was solid, and he played Rick's arch nemesis, Derek, on that show. But that show declined. I felt like shortly after Jason Bateman got off the air. And then Rick Schroeder, he was kind of less funny. You know what I mean? It was just, and then the dad, and then Kate, his dad's secretary. They got together and they got married. It was like nah. Excuse me. So now, um, different strokes. Different strokes. Came out, I believe, in I want to say 1970. I think it was 70. Ooh, I think it was like it was. Ooh, I think it was like in the early. Don't quote me on it. I think it was like 74, 73, 74, or 75. One of them. And different strokes. It starred Combat Bane, um, Dana Plato, rest in peace. Gary Coleman, rest in peace. Combat Bane, rest in peace, of course. Um, and oh God, why am I blanking right now? He played Willis. Todd Bridges. Todd Bridges. I think he's the only one who's alive right now. Um, so that show, that was about this rich Conrad Baines character. He's a single father, um, and he took these two boys in, Gary Coleman, and then Todd Bridges, characters, Arnold and Willis. He took them in, and basically the rest was history. Now Arnold was all for it, but um, Willis, he kind of sort of had to grow up fast a little bit because their mama passed away and all that stuff, and that was their mom's final wish, was for Mr. Drummond to take care of her two boys. So the rest of it was history. For the first couple seasons, um it was great, you know what I mean? And also you had Mrs. Garrett on there too as the housekeeper. Now, Mrs. Garrett's character, wanted to leave, and that led to the spinoff which is called The Facts of Life. Now, The Facts of Life premiered in 1979 to 1988. This Charlotte Rae, who played Mrs. Garrett, she was in she this was her own spinoff. So it kind of followed Mrs. Garrett, which the first season of that show, it was all over the place. I mean, you had Mrs. Garrett, of course, but then, you had the dean, and then you have basically the original cast, with the exception of Joe. You didn't have Joe. You didn't have the Joe character until season two. But also, this spawned like the career of Molly Ringwald. For those of you who don't know who Molly Ringwald is, in case you, or if you do know who she is, she was in 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club. She was in a movie called Tempest, where she got a Golden Globe nomination for Best New Star of the Year. She was also in Pretty in Pink. She was, involved in the Brat Pack. So by season two, Facts of Life, they ex-nay almost wiped out almost all the girls, with the exception of, they kept on Tootie and Natalie. And then, they brought in Joe, who was a tomboy, who was played by Nancy McKeon. Now, Nancy McKeon, they brought her on because, they saw her in her other works. She was in TV movies and stuff. And whenever it comes to, emotional scenes, she can cry on screen. You know what I'm saying? She can cry on cue. So they brought her in. So Joe was like this tough tomboy. You know what I'm saying? And she was very smart. And she had her and Blair, the characters, they got into it over the years. They hated each other because they from different types, different backgrounds. She Blair was the rich girl, and then what is her name? Okay, yeah, okay. So Blair was the rich girl, and Joe. Joe was from the wrong side of the track. She was poor. So, they kind of got into it. And their fights were really good. You know what I'm saying? And that was supposed to be a spinoff of Different Strokes. But you had the cast of Different Strokes guest starred on a couple of episodes. You saw Gary Coleman. He was in a couple of episodes of it. Dana Plato and Conrad Bain. So that but it turned into its own, I believe, season. I want to say late season two to season three. I think it turned into its own show. You know what I'm saying? So, then to me, it kind of fell flat when Charlotte Rae left, and they brought in Cloris Leachman. They brought in Will McKenzie, which I thought he was annoying. They brought in George Clooney, which he was an unknown back then. And then you had notable guest stars like David Spade, which I thought he was funny in that. The only thing he was funny in, and future 21 Jump Street star Richard Grieco was in that one too. He was in an episode. I think it's called. They were both in an episode. I think it's called. I think it was something Blues, New York Blues, or something like that. I forget the name of the title. So now you have Mary Hart. So now Norman Lear also executive produced Mary Hartman, which that was from 1976 to 1977, which I don't know anything about. I never heard of it before. Um, another thing he produced was he also produced, which was a spinoff or a continuation to Honor Family. It was called Archie Bunker's Place, which that premiered in the early '80s. And this was like a slap in the face because in this case, they killed off Edith in this one. I believe this was season two. They killed off Edith, and you know, Kill O'Connor. You know, Archie Bunkers, Kill O'Connor. Um, he gave this 5 minute monologue, which, oh my God, this will bring you into tears, talking about Edith and stuff like that. And, of all the stuff that he's said over the years about her and stuff, and it's like, wow. And it comes to show you, like, wow, I had it. Like, I had a good woman, and now she's gone now. So I'm like widow now. So it's like, what do I do from here? You know what I'm saying? And, deep down inside, he loved her. You know what I'm saying? But he didn't know how to. He showed it to a degree, but he didn't show it the way I guess she wanted him to. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that show didn't really last too long. You know what I mean? Um, Another good Norman Lear show that he did was 227. Now, this one stars Marla Gibbs, Hal Williams, um, future Academy Award winner Virginia King, um, and also this also kind of put Countess Vaughn, who played who played on the Parkers and Moesha. That's kind of put her on the map. And 227, this was a good show. And a lot of people say what made the show was Jack A. Harry, who played Sandra, which I could see where they're coming from. And I liked Sandra. I liked her in like the earlier seasons, but then once towards the end, it just got a little bit too monotonous. You know what I'm saying? And funny enough, um, Jack A. Harry was supposed to get a spinoff. They had a backdoor pilot for her to get her own spinoff, but it no um network picked it up. You know what I'm saying? And once you add like Stoney Jackson and I'm like, no, you can't do that. No, that's it. That is a wrap. So another show that he did, and I forgot to mention this one. There's a show called One Day at a Time, which that came out in 1975 to 1984. Now, One Day at a Time, um, you have Bonnie Franklin, you have Pat Harrington, you have Valerie Bertinelli, and you have them, and Bonnie Franklin, she was a single mother raising two kids, and then you have this janitor who acts so horny. It's not even funny, and he has a crush on Bonnie Franklin's character, and that show was pretty good. You know what I mean? I didn't watch all of it. I have the whole series on DVD. Mackenzie Phillips is also in that one too. Now for those you don't know who she is, she was in one of my favorite movies of all time, American Graffiti. Now she is the little girl who had a crush on I forget his name, but I forget his name, but I thought she was great in that. I thought she was great. And um what else? Mackenzie Phillips, she was in it for a little bit. The first couple of seasons, and then she had issues with drugs and all that stuff, and she had drug addiction, so she came back for a brief stint and then left again because she relapsed. And I believe she's still alive, I believe. Yeah, like all these shows that I mentioned, have won Emmys, or Emmys and Golden Globes, or was nominated. You know what I'm saying? I don't think Silver Spoons. I don't think that was nominated for anything. I'm not 100% sure. Don't call me on it. So, and then Norman Lear, like I said earlier, he also executive produced a couple of notable movies. One of them being Princess Bride and Fried Green Tomatoes, which both of them I have not seen yet. So, all in all, though, um, excuse me, Norman Lear, you're talking about a television icon. Like, he is very iconic. And if this was if all these shows came on today, I don't think it would fly. It would not fly today. And it would not fly today due to the due to the subject matter, and then due to the racism undertones and stuff. So I mean, he brought us so much content, brought us so much good content. It wasn't even funny. And Norman Lear, one of the best producers of all time. He's definitely like top tier producer. He's like the goat of comedy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I put him over people like James Burrows, or even Stephen Bochco. Stephen Bochco, I think, where I put Stephen Bochco, I put him as the goat of crime shows. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, over all in all, though, like, you know, Norman Lear, like, we thank you for the countless, for the timeless memories. We thank you for All in the Family. We thank you for the Jeffersons. We thank you for Good Times. You know what I'm saying? He, and if it wasn't for Norman Lear, like, you wouldn't see like some of the actors today. You know what I mean? Like, he launched the actors, he launched careers of Carol O'Connor or Rob Reiner. You know what I'm saying? Rob Reiner's a director now. John Amos, who was in Roots, who was also in Coming to America. You know what I'm saying? Red Fox, Marla Gibbs, um, you know, Regina King, and now she's an Oscar winner. You know what I'm saying? Who else? Rick Schroeder, Sherman Hemsley, and some of these people, and some of these actors, they came from Broadway. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that Norman Lear, gave him a chance, gave him the time to shine, it comes to show you that, that's a producer who's, is willing to give his actors, a chance and stuff like that. And yes, there has been a lot of backstage heat because apparently he got paid more than his Leading actors and actresses, yes, yes, there has been. But all in all, despite all that, Norman Lear, he is a comic genius. He's a creative genius. You know what I'm saying? And Norman Lear, we thank you for the countless memories. We thank you for all these Norman Lear shows. You taught us a lot. You taught us lessons, whether it's racism, whether it's homosexuality, whether it's politics and all that stuff. You taught us a lot. So, you taught us, say no to drugs, or you know, don't talk to strangers and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So, with this being said, Norman Lear, you will be forever in our hearts, and may you rest in peace. I will see you guys in the next live stream. Peace out.